Today we're talking about Descript. Picture a podcast editor at 2 in the morning, headphones on, eyes burning, scrubbing back and forth across a timeline that looks like a seismograph reading. They're hunting for one stray buried somewhere in 40 minutes of audio. This is the unglamorous reality behind almost every podcast, video, and voiceover you've ever heard. Somebody, somewhere, fought that timeline. Now picture a different scene. That same editor opens a document. They see words on a page like any text file. They find the sentence they don't want. They hit Backspace. The sentence disappears, and so does the audio underneath it. That second scene is where this story begins. And the person who built it had already learned, the hard way, just how punishing the first scene could be. Before Descript, there was Andrew Mason. Some of you will know his name from Groupon, the company he co-founded years earlier. But by the late 2000s, Mason was running something very different. A startup called Detour, which produced richly crafted audio walking tours of cities. Creatively, Detour was a success. Operationally, it was a grind. Each tour took months and real money to produce. And the bottleneck was never the writing or the voice talent. It was the editing. The slow, fiddly technical work of cutting and arranging sound on a timeline. Mason kept circling one question. Editing tools were built for trained professionals. The distance between having an idea and actually finishing something was enormous. What if editing audio could be as simple as editing a Word document? It turned out the technology to make that real had just become good enough. Automatic transcription and text-to-audio alignment had matured to the point where text could function as a control surface for sound. Mason spun the idea out of Detour into a new company. Descript launched in 2017. Detour itself was later sold to Bose. What happened next is a useful case study, not in finding one lightning bolt insight, but in what happens after you find it. Today, Descript is valued at around $550 million. And its story is really a story about relentlessly converting a clever interface into a durable business. Let's start with the gap Descript actually walked into. By the late 2000s, the creator economy was exploding. Podcasting was living through a golden age. Video had become the default language of the internet. Suddenly, everyone needed to produce decent narrative media. Not just professional studios, but solo creators, marketing teams, sales teams, anyone trying to communicate with a camera or a microphone. The tools available to them sat at two extremes. On one end, simple apps with real limits. On the other, powerful but punishing professional suites. Adobe Premiere, Final Cut Pro, built for people who already knew what a waveform was and had hours to spend taming one. In between those two extremes sat a huge, underserved population. People who wanted studio quality output, but had neither the technical skill nor the patience for multi-track editing. They weren't being ignored because their problem was small. They were being ignored because nobody had built the right interface for them yet. That gap was Descript's opening. And the company's answer to it was almost suspiciously simple. Here's the pitch. Upload an audio file, get an automatic transcript, and edit the audio by editing the text. Delete a sentence on the page, and the matching audio vanishes with it. If you could use a Backspace key, you could edit a podcast. This wasn't a friendlier timeline. It was the removal of the timeline altogether. That distinction matters because most of the editing industry, before and since, has tried to make professional tools more approachable. Softer onboarding, better tutorials, slicker buttons around the same fundamental complexity. Descript didn't smooth the path through the forest. It built a different forest. That's the definition of a genuine 0-to-1 shift, and it's part of why podcasters adopted it so quickly. But podcasting was always meant to be the beachhead, not the destination. The ambition from the start was a horizontal creation suite for any speech-driven media, audio, video, anything built around the spoken word. So the company didn't stop at the editor. It treated text-based editing as a foundation to build on, which meant it also had to improve the raw material that foundation depended on. In 2019, Descript acquired Lyrebird, a voice cloning startup. That acquisition became the engine behind a feature called Overdub, letting users fix a misspoken word by simply typing the correction and having it spoken back in their own synthetic voice, no re-recording required. A year later, the same text-based paradigm was extended into video. Each of these moves followed the same internal logic. Don't just build a clever feature. Identify the next layer of friction in the workflow and absorb it into the product. Then came the moment that tested this approach at scale: generative AI. In November 2022, the same month ChatGPT arrived and reset the entire industry's expectations, Descript raised a $50 million Series C, led by the OpenAI Startup Fund, and shipped its largest product update to date. Here's where the story gets strategically interesting. The obvious move, the one nearly every software company made that year, was to bolt a generic chat box onto the interface and call it AI. Descript, under Laura Burkhauser, who had risen from individual contributor product manager to CEO in roughly 3 years, went the other way entirely. Instead of a blank prompt box, the team mapped the specific moments where creators actually got stuck: bad retakes, poor eye contact with the camera, rambling tangents that needed trimming. And for each of those moments, they built a dedicated pre-packaged button. Studio Sound cleaned up bad audio in a single click. Eye contact nudged a speaker's gaze toward the lens automatically. This is a deceptively important distinction. A blank chat box asks the user to know what to ask for. A button asks nothing. It simply solves a problem the user already recognizes. One invites paralysis, the other invites action. Just as important was how these features were tested. The team evaluated them on real, messy user recordings, not pristine studio samples. The reasoning was simple. A noise reduction feature tuned on a clean lab recording is worthless to someone recording a podcast in an echoey bedroom on a laptop microphone. If your test data doesn't look like your customer's reality, your feature will fail the moment it meets that reality. And running underneath all of it was a single metric. Burkhauser anchored the entire AI strategy to the export rate, not engagement, not time spent in the app, whether a feature actually got used and resulted in a finished exported piece of media. If an AI tool got touched but never led to an export, it had failed, no matter how impressive the demo looked. That's a remarkably disciplined way to keep a flashy new technology honest. Rather than build a narrow point tool, Descript built an agent called Underlord, designed to operate across the entire product rather than living in one corner of it. Now, building all of this is only half the story. None of it matters if nobody understands what they're looking at. And this is where Descript's marketing becomes just as instructive as its product decisions. A strong product that nobody understands is just a secret. Descript's growth leaned heavily on marketing that made the software feel less like software and more like a magic trick. Rather than try to sell the abstract concept of text-based editing, which is a hard idea to market because most people have never needed that idea articulated to them, the team led with vivid, specific use cases. The campaign that really broke through showcased one button: remove filler words, every and stripped out instantly across an entire recording. That's not a complicated pitch. It's an instantly relatable moment of relief. Everyone who has ever recorded themselves talking knows the dread of listening back and hearing how many times they said, Descript didn't explain the technology behind that fix. It just showed the fix happening. And that pulled enormous attention to the top of the funnel. From there, a freemium loop did the actual converting. A free tier let people feel that aha moment of text-based editing for themselves and let them export watermarked videos, which doubled as free advertising every time one of those videos got shared. Limits on transcription length gently pushed serious, frequent creators toward paid plans. The product was, in effect, selling itself. Even the branding of the AI assistant carried strategic weight. While competitors were shipping generically named AI co-pilots, Descript called its assistant Underlord, positioning it as an eager, slightly mischievous, well-meaning intern rather than some looming job-stealing overlord. For a creative audience that was understandably uneasy about AI taking over their craft, that framing was disarming. It made the technology feel collaborative instead of threatening. A small naming choice, doing a lot of emotional work. And the company kept extending its reach at the edges of the workflow. In 2023, it acquired Squadcast, a remote recording platform. That move let Descript capture creators at the very moment of recording, before editing even begins, and offer one continuous path from capture to edit to publish. It also quietly cut off rivals who might otherwise have owned that earlier, upstream moment in the funnel. So what should operators actually take from all of this? First, design for the aha moment, but market the painkiller. The core innovation here was text-based editing. But the marketing rarely sold that idea directly. It sold time and it sold confidence. Isolating a feature like filler word removal in a campaign sells immediate relief from something tedious, and that consistently converts better than explaining the technology underneath it. Second, prepackage AI into predictable workflows. A blank chat box invites hesitation. Descript's experience suggests the most useful AI tools are the constrained ones. Complex models hidden behind simple, predictable buttons that protect the quality of whatever the user ends up with. Third, evaluate on real-world conditions. It's tempting to test on clean data and ship something elegant in the lab that falls apart in the wild. Match your test data to how your customers actually work, not to how you wish they worked. Fourth, own the value chain to defend the moat. As single-feature competitors emerged to pick off pieces of the market, short-form clipping tools, for instance, Descript leaned into being the comprehensive suite, owning recording, editing, and clipping together. That raises switching costs, and it compounds customer value over time. Descript didn't arrive at its position through luck or through one breakthrough moment. It found product-market fit by naming a real structural flaw in how media gets made. Then it scaled by pairing continual product development with marketing aimed precisely at its users' frustrations, not at its own technology. The broader lesson sits underneath all of it. Building a genuinely novel tool is only half the job. The rest is packaging it into features people immediately understand, branding it with some empathy for the anxieties of the people who will use it, and marketing it to a specific, felt pain rather than an abstract capability. In an era when nearly every company is racing to bolt on AI, the companies that win will likely be the ones that hide the machine's complexity entirely, and leave the user with something that simply feels like ease. This was the marketing behind rapid growth. See you in the next episode.